Reese, get all your cuss words out before we go live.
My swearing. I'm gonna be pretty vulgar.
I know you always are. Hey,
Yeah.
what is up, guys? Welcome to the live stream. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We are here to talk about the Batman. You know, just a thing that happened, a movie that came out. It's just a movie.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about it. We're going to go in depth, and I'm going to share my thoughts on the movie. And not only that, I'm going to share my controversial thoughts about the movie, my thoughts about the movie that everyone agrees with, and I think we'll have a great discussion. And Salvage and Jake are likely going to be joining us later. Right now, I'm joined by Kelly and Teresa. Their channels are linked down in the description below. Wonder Woman 91 and Jester Bell, their YouTube channels are in the description. Go subscribe to them, check them out. They make great content, so make sure that you are subscribed to their channels. So I thought we would just jump in right away and do a quick roundtable with an overall review, a quick overview of what you thought of the film. And keep in mind, guys, this live stream is in full spoilers. So if you've not seen the movie, click off right away. We're going deep into every facet of this 2 hour and 56 minute movie. So let's start with you, Kelly. What did you think of the Batman?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I felt very similar to how I felt when I saw the most recent Spider-Man movie. I felt like I had been transported. I just recently, well, maybe not that recently, turned 30. I felt like I had been transported back in time to being 10 years old and just being ecstatic. And I have to say, even the second time watching it, I'm sitting in the theater and I'm just like, big grin on my face, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So that is my perspective. That is where I'm coming from. Total fangirl. There's a couple of issues. There's a couple of minor things that I struggled with a little bit, but overall, I think it's a fantastic movie. And I also I feel like I'm a little bit hard to please with some of these things because I don't like. One of the issues I have with Marvel movies is kind of the childish humor, and like every 5 minutes there's some sort of dumb like fart joke or whatever it happens to be. And there wasn't any of that in this movie, and I thought it was just really nice to see a serious superhero movie for once instead of kind of the jokestery. We have to take ourselves out of the moment every couple of seconds, or we might make people feel not happy. We want everyone to feel happy. This is Disney. This is Disneyland. This is not Disneyland. We've left Disneyland. We've nuked it and burned it and thrown it. That's how I feel about Batman. That scene, again, this is a spoilers stream.
Full spoilers. Everybody leave right now. It is in bold in the title, so you should know about this. By the way, Taladia Plays, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. Appreciate you, man. Go ahead.
My favorite moment in the movie is when there's the big fiery background and Batman gets out of the Batmobile and does the slow walk upside down, and it's the just his silhouette against the fiery background, the beautiful.
I was transformed into glory at that moment, by the way.
I think Teresa and I both rose out of our seats and floated up into the sky at that point. But that encapsulates what I'm trying to say about that was just destroying Disneyland, destroying happy feelings, destroying all of that. Get rid of it, burn it all, and just have a serious, grounded Batman movie. Finally, I loved it.
Teresa, what did you think?
Okay, so I have a different experience for this movie than Kelly did. Can you guys hear me okay? I just want to make sure.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So I've spent like 5 or 6 years as like this diehard Batman fan who's been reading different graphic novels and following watching the Dark Knight trilogy and the animated series over and over again, but also being very, very frustrated with how the DCEU was and how it's handled its characters. I know I've been pretty honest. I'm not generally a DCEU fan and what they've done there, or a BVS fan or anything. So I've been frustrated with DC and largely what they've been doing, but I've been reading various comics and just imagining what Batman should be on screen and what I would like a Batman movie to be and the direction that they should go in. And a different direction than even the Nolan films, which were really striving to be realistic and, striving to make sure that there was a realistic explanation for everything, except in The Dark Knight Rises, where Batman gets out of the pit and magically shows up in Gotham again with no explanation in between that. Anyway, so I've been waiting years, just waiting for a Batman film to really hit all the marks for me. And I was worried that, I said from the very beginning, I was really worried that the Batman was just going to be a remake of Batman Begins and what Nolan did. And it's not that at all, at least in my opinion. It works on so many levels. There were so many moments where I was going crazy from all the Batman media I've consumed, things that were ripped straight out of year one. The things like even just outfits characters would wear, like Catwoman is wearing her year one outfit in one scene. Things like that were so accurate to the comics. You're laughing. Oh, we'll get to that.
No, I just saw Kelly's comment in the chat. That's what I'm laughing at. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Okay. Okay. What was I going to say? It works on so many levels, like just from even a comic book level, but a cinematography level. That just was. I loved so many of the shots, and I love the style of the movie, how it uses reds and yellows and blues, like really specific choices with the color grading. It reminds me of graphic novel coloring, and it reminded me a lot of Batman the Animated Series. So if I were to choose like one thing, and once again, this is spoilers, just that encapsulates like how the movie was just perfect for me, it's Riddler, because for most of the movie, he's very much Zodiac killer. He's very scary and he's very deranged. And I'm like, this is good, but it's not really the Riddler I know. I expect Riddler to be kind of pathetic, honestly, in his demeanor, at least, like really intelligent, but kind of pathetic. But then, and this is spoilers, when you get him out of that suit, he was exactly what I wanted from Riddler's character. And I'm like, perfect. So that's what I got to say about this movie. I've been waiting for this kind of movie for like 5 or 6 years to come out. And I was really hyped up about it because of what critics were saying. And I was worried I was going to be like disappointed because I would be brought down by the reality of the movie, but it blew me away. And I watched it twice now, and it blew me away on the second time. I didn't get tired of it. So yeah, I loved it. You can tell. What did Kelly say in the chat?
Kelly said there's too many Italians in this live stream, which is just objectively the case. I mean, that's self-evidently true.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'll give you my thoughts on the movie, and I will also... Okay, I'm going to save the criticisms that I have. Like, let's do this as a separate segment because everyone's going to freak out if I list any negatives off the bat, because overall...
You have negatives? Are you serious?
Yes,
you
I do.
have negatives.
We'll talk about it.
How dare you?
We'll talk about it. No, I think this movie's a 9 out of 10 for me. I thought it was fantastic. It did, honestly... I would say it met my expectations, and that might be surprising to some people, but my expectations were incredibly high. This is one of the most anticipated movies I've ever went into. I knew that Matt Reeves was an incredible director. I knew that Robert Pattinson is a fantastic actor, and honestly, I was going into this movie expecting it to be my favorite Batman movie of all time. And I don't exactly know where I stand on that. The Dark Knight, I would have to rewatch it. I mean, I've already seen it 40 times. I know it pretty well, but I probably will rewatch that next to the Batman this week and think about it. Not that it really matters what I think or say about it, but just because I want to have a favorite that I can say. If someone asks me, hey, what's your favorite Batman movie? I want to be able to have that answer, because right now I'm honestly torn, and I don't know why. And the reason why I'm torn is because The Batman is probably the best shot Batman movie of all time. It features the most humanity that we've ever seen from Batman and the Bruce Wayne character. In the other Batman movies, you don't exactly see as much of that. And you see, in the third act in particular, Batman going from being this masked vigilante to almost being like a firefighter in a certain sense, because he's rescuing people from this flood and he's saving people's lives, and he's doing so without beating anybody up. And that's something that you don't see very often in Batman movies and superhero movies more broadly. I thought the character moments that we got with Batman and Alfred were really, really strong. I was expecting to see more of Alfred in the movie. I will say that. I was expecting to see more of him, and I would like to see more of him in the second film. I felt that the cameo at the end with, again, spoilers, everybody click away if you haven't seen the movie, with the Joker, I felt that really worked, actually, and I was trepidatious as to whether or not it would be forced, which, by the way, can I just say, it is hysterical that the Joker's brother literally posted on Facebook that he literally posted 3 months ago, like, ha ha ha, my brother is the Joker in the new Batman movie, LOL. And then he deleted it one day later, and we're like, there's no way that's real. He's obviously trolling. Like, nobody would egregiously violate their NDA in that sort of way. Well, okay, he literally did. Like, it's kind of wild. Anyway, that guy has got to get sued into oblivion, I'm sure.
It was funny, just to interrupt. It was funny because he actually apparently saw like a Heroic Hollywood, because some guy leaked it and nobody believed it this was like a new leaker or something. So nobody believed it. But then like Barry Keoghan's brother saw the like a Heroic Hollywood, which is like a like clickbait fan site. Which does a lot of stuff that's not true. He saw that, thought it was real, that it announced Barry Keoghan as the Joker, thought that Warner Brothers had officially announced it.
Oh,
so
is
he
that
took
what
to
happened?
Facebook. Yes, he thought that was an official announcement. So he took to Facebook to just celebrate with his friends and family. I can finally talk about this. My brother's the Joker. It's so crazy.
Oh, my
and
gosh.
and everyone's like, what? And everyone's like, what, is this real? Is like, he wouldn't actually out his brother like that, would he? And then he takes it down. And I guess he did. I can't imagine like the embarrassment of that or what went down behind the scenes, but oh dear.
Oh, I want to sit in on that HR meeting.
Seriously, there's got to be so many lawsuits coming from that. No, but I thought the movie was fantastic. I felt that the second act was the strongest act in the film. There are periods where the movie feels a little bit long. You feel the 3 hours of it at certain points, but at no point was I bored. And really halfway through, 2/3 of the way through, I wasn't really feeling like, oh, this is a really long movie. In the first act, I felt that the build was definitely a little bit slow, but once it got moving, it really, really hit its stride, and I wanted it to keep going even past the 3 hour mark. I just wanted to stay in that world. So I know that some people, the 3 hours was really a problem for them. I'm curious to know what you guys thought about the length of the movie, because it really didn't bother me. And like I said, I did feel that the first act took a while to develop, which is fine. They had a lot of characters to introduce. There's a lot of moving parts in this movie, and I think a lot of people, I've only seen it once, but I think a lot of people are going to get a lot more out of their second viewing. And I'm curious, Kelly, what you got out of your second viewing today, and if you liked the movie more or less than you did on the first viewing.
Yeah, I have to say, I really actually wanted to take this question, because on the first viewing, I definitely felt the fatigue of it being such a long movie. Especially in the third act, I was just kind of like, okay, I feel like we're in Return of the King now. We never know when it's going to end, and it could have ended here, and it could have ended there, and it could have ended here, and I'm really getting tired, and I didn't have enough sugar before we did this. So then on the second viewing, I actually felt like it was a lot more fast-paced, because I knew what was coming, and in some movies that's a bad thing. In some movies, because you know what's coming, like, I mean, I hate to say it, but like in the example of the Spider-Man movie, because all the surprises are spoiled by the second viewing, it loses a little bit of its flavor when you see it a second time. This one, it actually enhances it, because I'm not like I'm able to see more things, because I'm not struggling to, okay, what does this mean and why is this happening? And so it actually enhanced the movie for me to see it a second time, and I felt like it was a lot more fast-paced. I even felt like the scene that I described, when there's the big explosion and Batman comes up with his silhouette and the fire and all of that, I actually felt like that scene was rushed the second time I saw it, because the first time I almost felt like I was watching it in slow-mo, because it was my first viewing and I was so excited and I didn't know what was going to happen. Because I knew it was going to happen the second time, it felt a lot faster, and it felt a lot it felt worth having the 3 hours the second time, and the first time it didn't. And I will say, just as a point of disagreement, I actually liked the first 2/3 of the movie more than the third, or excuse me, the third segment of the movie, because and this is a personal thing. This isn't to say everybody's wrong who disagrees with me, although that's probably true. But what I will say, is that I watch a lot of Alfred Hitchcock. I watch a lot of like detective murder stories and that kind of thing. And so I loved the first 2/3 of the movie, and then the final third of the movie. At least the first time I watched it, I wasn't as engaged, maybe. And then the second time I watched it, I felt like it was more cohesive all the way through, and it made more sense the second time. But upon the first viewing, I have to say, all the way up until spoilers, like, guys, get out if you are gonna get mad at this point. I don't know what to tell you. When Falcone gets killed, it was kind of at that point.
Falcone for the last time.
Right.
Okay, that is my biggest problem with the movie. I was gonna bring that up.
It's Falcone. Yeah, it is.
It is.
Here's the reason.
Carry on.
Here's the reason why they did that, because there's Maroni and then there's Falcone.
Yeah.
It's still wrong.
It's still wrong. It is still wrong. I'm with Teresa on this.
I agree. It is still wrong.
You're justifying this for them. You can't defend this. This is just. This is egregious. This is worse than. This is like saying Roz versus Ra's al Ghul. Like, it's not Ra's al Ghul. It's Ra's. Exactly. And it's the same thing with Falcone. I agree. Teresa and I are on the same page here. Continue, Kelly.
Oh man, I'm getting dinged. I feel like I'm being raced on Twitter right now. What the heck is going on? But it was kind of at that point when he died. Is it okay if I like assume his pronouns here? When he died, it was kind of at that point that I started to lose a little bit of the excitement, because I was like, okay, the murder mystery has completed, and I almost felt like, again, this was the first viewing. I almost felt like I fell off a little bit. But then watching it the second time, it felt like it was a more cohesive story as a whole, if that makes sense. Go ahead and gang up on me some more. Why don't you?
Okay, is it my turn to talk about like the runtime now?
Yes.
Yes, true. Let me pass the baton here.
Yes.
Okay. So, well, I had a similar thing where the first time I agree with Kobe a bit on the first watch, and he's only seen it once, where I felt like the beginning is just kind of plodding along and it could go a little quicker. And I was also having that thing at the end where I'm like, is it going to end here? Is it going to end there? Where's it going to end? And then when it did end, I was like, oh, now we're done. So I had that in the beginning, and it did feel really long, even though I was engaged. But again, I saw it again today, and it felt like it was moving a lot faster, and I wasn't impatient with it. And that's kind of the opposite experience I had with Endgame, which is like the same length. Because with Endgame, I loved it on the first watch, and then on multiple viewings afterwards, I'm like, there were a lot of parts where I'm like, I want to skip past this, and this is trying my patience. This movie, this might be TMI, but so they brought back these like giant Mountain Dew ices at my theater, and I drank one. So I had to go to the bathroom really bad. I know it's TMI, but I was always like, but I don't want to miss this part, and I don't want to miss this next part that's coming. So I just think it's a very well-made film, and there's a lot. Like, I think each scene has a purpose, whether it's for the mystery or for the characters. So, like, I would be curious to see how you, Kobe, and other people feel on second watches, because it just felt a lot more smoother to me, and it didn't feel too long. And I think that there's a lot of good stuff there to dig into, so it's good on multiple viewings, and it's stronger. I do think that, like, the third act, like, I've watched it twice now, and I think it works for me. It works for what they were trying to do with Batman's character arc. I can understand why someone might think that's a bit wonky with how, you kill Falcone, and then the movie just keeps running on, and then you got this water system thing going on. I can understand why someone would have a problem with that, but I didn't really.
I just put a poll in the chat, guys. A conversation that we'll be getting to towards the end of the show. Is The Batman the best Batman movie ever made? Please vote in that poll, and we'll be talking about that later in the live stream. I'll also say one thing that I thought was really interesting is that the movie was a lot more like The Long Halloween than I was expecting. I mean, literally from the opening frame, they basically established that this is The Long Halloween, and this is basically the Riddler in The Long Halloween. The only difference being, obviously, The Long Halloween is a mystery, and you don't know who is the killer. In this, you know exactly who the killer is, but nonetheless, it's still a phenomenal story, and it's just presented in a slightly different way. But it is basically The Long Halloween in that sense. And I quite like the Zodiac Killer thing. Now, I'm going to get into one criticism right away. And I know this is going to get me ratioed. Any criticism of this movie is going to get me ratioed, and people are going to be upset. But I did feel that the Riddler, the foundation of the Riddler was incredible. There were a couple of points where it felt overacted to me towards the end of his arc. So when he is in Arkham Asylum, and that sort of thing, it was a great scene, but at certain points it did feel a little bit much, like maybe 20 to 30% too eccentric. And I was listening to Jeremy Johns in his review, and he said exactly the same thing. And I was like, okay, I'm not the only one, where it almost felt too Joker-esque for me. I don't think that he was the Joker in any way, and I really liked the direction they took the Riddler in the film. I just felt that at certain points it was kind of pushing the limits for me, and it took me out of the movie a little bit.
Can you clarify at what point? Like, are we talking about the scene where he and Batman are going back and forth, or at the very end when he's in Arkham? Is that where?
Really both. But especially at the very end when he's talking with the Joker, it makes it so apparent. It's like, wait, they're both the Joker. Like, this is weird. So I thought that was a little odd, to be honest. But nonetheless, I really like this rendition of the Riddler. But yeah, it's just really interesting how The Long Halloween is obviously one of the greatest Batman graphic novels of all time. And then the animated movie, the 2-part animated movie, came out not too long ago. And that was better than the graphic novel, which already is like a super, super high bar. But the animated movie was, in my opinion, better than the graphic novel. And now this movie comes out, and it's even a better rendition of that story. So I think we're Long Halloweened out for a couple of decades. I think we can, I think we can probably move on to Batman Hush, or maybe Year One, or we've already done Year One a bunch too. Yeah, let's go to Batman Hush or something like that. But I thought that it was really a masterful take on that, and it was really Matt Reeves' spin and sort of interpretation of that classic story, and I thought he did it masterfully. The other thing that I'll say is just the cinematography was obviously stunning. I mean, everything about it, the way it was shot was just incredible.
Yeah, it was the same cinematographer who did Dune,
and it really showed in the film.
Yeah.
I just have to cut in here too, because I loved it how there seems to be, or there has been a trend that I've noticed when watching movies over the last maybe 10 years to make everything as crystal clear, as high definition. We got to be able to see every detail. And what this movie did, which I haven't seen in other movies thus far in a long time, is it actually had it so that it's just that opening scene when you're looking through Batman's eyes, and it's like it's hard to focus, because in real life it is hard to focus on certain things. As somebody who needs glasses and still doesn't have them, it is hard to focus on these things. And so just things like during the car chase scene, one of the things I really enjoyed about that was you're looking through a windshield and it's raining and it's actually hard to see, instead of just being able to see straight through it. And basically the way that I've seen again, I'm criticizing Marvel just because that's the thing that everybody's been watching. It's like, okay, yeah, it's raining, but we're going to clear that up and cut to the chase because we need to be able to see the action that's going on. I really like that they made it more realistic in the sense of, it's actually hard to see. When somebody smashes a glass window and it doesn't break, you can't see through it anymore. Just stuff like that I really appreciated. And then there's one other scene that I forgot to mention that's so comic booky. Like when Reese, is it like 2/3 of the way through the movie, or maybe it's right before the car chase scene when Batman starts driving the Batmobile and
I got
it's like the headlight makes the shape that you would expect to see either in an animated movie or in an episode of the animated series.
Yeah, I just got to say, when that car like started screeching, like that sound that car makes, I lost my ever-loving mind when that happened. I have not felt like that since I heard the sound of Iron Man's repulsors from the Avengers. I went absolutely bananas.
I have a question that I wanted to pose to both of you guys. Nicholas Rodriguez sends in a super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Nicholas. He says, Pattinson didn't look or behave like Bruce Wayne. What do you guys think about that? Do you agree?
I agree with that 100%.
You do?
I think that, yeah, no, I think this is the best Batman movie. And I actually just shot my own YouTube video that won't be going up just yet, but I talk about how I think this is the best Batman movie. The reason The Dark Knight is the movie that it is and is as acclaimed as it is not because of Batman, is not because of Bruce Wayne, is not because of anything else other than the Joker. And that's not to say that those things were bad. I just think that they're mediocre, perhaps, in the shadow of what the performance of the Joker was in that movie. This was the first time I've actually seen Batman be the lead and be the most important part of the movie. On the flip side, Bruce Wayne was basically nowhere to be seen. He basically was not in the movie. He was kind of a side character that didn't really exist. And so the actual Bruce Wayne persona we haven't seen yet. And I think that probably in future movies we might see that from Pattinson, and he might actually become the schmoozy playboy, whatever, that we know of from most other iterations. But I 100% agree. This is not a Bruce Wayne movie. This is a Batman movie. And I think that this is possibly, at least for me, I'm not as much of a nerd on this subject as Teresa. So I haven't seen anything other than the most recent iterations of Batman, probably the last 10 to 15 years worth of Batman. But this is the first time that Batman has been the lead for me and has been the biggest draw. Amen.
Amen. I was gonna say before Kelly said it, I agree. There is no. I keep hearing people say that Bruce Wayne was like weak in this movie, and I'm like, there is no Bruce Wayne in this movie. And but going back to my understanding of, first of all, what they're doing in this universe and who Batman is. Batman in most iterations is someone who sees himself as Batman first, not Bruce Wayne. And I saw someone online today say something different, that no, Bruce Wayne sees Bruce Wayne first. That person has never read anything Batman. If he has, maybe he's only seen the Adam West version. I don't know what he's talking about. Even in Batman Beyond, Bruce Wayne says he doesn't refer to himself in his mind as Bruce. He refers to himself as Batman. He is Batman first. And this movie is about a Bruce Wayne, if you will, who's trying to lose himself in the Batman persona. He doesn't want to have an identity as Bruce Wayne. Specifically, that's pointed out specifically in the movie. And even though Alfred's kind of pushing that on him in a scene where he's like, Alfred, you're not my dad. Now go kill yourself. No, he's not like that. But
pretty much. And then he's like, I don't care what happens to me. I don't care what happens to me.
Like he is so mean to Alfred in this movie.
Yes,
it's a joke to me. Like he's like, Alfred, I need to do my exercises, so go upstairs so I can kick you down the stairs a couple times. But anyway, what I was getting at is that's the purpose, and that's what Matt Reeves is doing. He's said it, that it's his intention that these are all, including the Joker, these are essentially proto versions of the characters we know, and that the Joker we hear in this movie as a cameo is not the Joker yet. So he wanted to create an arc throughout the movies where we would see things develop, like Batman realizing that he needs to create this Bruce Wayne persona. I mean, when I think of Christian Bale's Batman, I think, yeah, this guy is a Bruce Wayne who goes to parties and he drinks champagne and he has like 2 supermodels on his arm. This Batman, Bruce Wayne, he sits in his basement and watches porn and doesn't go out. He needs to develop this persona. Just before, I don't want to talk too much longer, just before we move on, I would say this Batman / Bruce Wayne, I don't think it's going to be many people's definitive Batman. I wondered if this movie was going to give me the definitive Batman, which we've talked about a lot, definitive Batman versus different takes on the character. It is a take on the character, and it's my favorite one I've seen in movies. I would not say it's definitive quite yet. It's really leaned into the freak nature, and that's what Robert Pattinson said, the freak nature of Batman and that perception of him more than anything else. And the fact that this guy is kind of crazy and that he will chase Penguin in his super rocket-powered car and bash him and make his car fly in the air and flip over, and he should be dead, but he's not. So I'd love that. That just happens to play into my taste and what I want to see in these stories, and a take on Batman I would like to see. But that's kind of my defense of the Bruce Wayne stuff, that we haven't seen that formed yet. And whether we like it or not, this is another take on the character, as opposed to just trying to be like bullseye in the middle, exactly what everyone would expect from Bruce Batman. And we're going to see him grow into things. By the way, before we move on, I'm not talking too long. The one thing I was thinking through my first viewing of the movie all through was, give this Batman a Robin. Give him a 9-year-old Robin to train. I want to watch that. 9 years old, like the original comics. I want to watch
that. Is that even moral?
Well, this Batman is entirely moral. I mean, like, child protective services are not going to allow this Bruce Wayne to have a child. Maybe that's why he'll invent the Bruce Wayne persona. Or he's going to break into the orphanage and steal a kid and turn him into Robin, which I will watch. Even if people don't like it, I will watch that.
I have to give a little bit of insight to Kobe on what it's like to watch a movie with Teresa, because she had me laughing so hard. There's this point in the movie where it's right after the hospital scene. Bruce Wayne goes back to the mansion or whatever. He rips his shirt off and starts moving furniture around, and I just started laughing hysterically for whatever, because I was like, what the heck? Oh, excuse me, Alfred, don't bother me. I'm ripping my shirt off right now so I can move some furniture.
They had to throw in the Easter egg to the Twilight fans in there. Like, they had to do something for them.
Oh, Teresa, what was the thing that you made me laugh today in the movie?
Well, when I just think it's hilarious, when unintentionally hilarious, just hilarious to me, that Alfred gets blown up essentially because of Bruce, and then Bruce is like sitting in the hospital next to him on his deathbed, and the first thing he says when Alfred wakes up is, "You lied to me, Alfred." And I'm like, Alfred wakes up and is like, "Oh, I'm in hell waking up to this guy."
He just keeps
like, just let me die.
And at the end of the movie, it's like he's such like the emo Bruce Wayne and the emo Batman. And so at the end of the movie, it's like wrapping it up, and Teresa says to me, I mean, the line that Bruce Wayne says, "Thursday," and Teresa says to me, "The cyanide didn't work, so I'm gonna try the news."
No, Thursday, the cyanide didn't work. I'm gonna try the noose this time. He's such a goth Batman. I love it. I thought I would hate it, but I love it.
He is he is. You're exactly right about that. David Kaplan, thank you for the $2 super chat. I think the hospital scene was a real highlight. I completely agree. And David, to your point, and to the point that you guys were just making as well, I felt that besides when Batman was being an asshole and basically only caring about the fact that he had been lied to by Alfred rather than the fact that he, I don't know, was kind of inadvertently responsible for him being blown up and nearly dying. And then he starts gaslighting him and guilt tripping him immediately upon awakening. So that's a valid criticism. But the hospital scene I thought was fantastic. And this movie is the strongest, I think, when we see Bruce Wayne's humanity. It is true that he does not act like Bruce Wayne in the other movies. He's not as cocky and lambastic or bombastic and as showboaty in a certain sense. Even I thought it was very weird how the mayor was like, "You don't do enough to help Gotham, and you're not charitable enough." And like, I guess that would have made more sense if he had rolled up in, like he did in Batman Begins, in that Ferrari with his arm candy and all of this. But, Bruce Wayne doesn't present himself like that. He's I guess the best way to describe it is this Bruce Wayne is not douchey. He's just kind of like nerdy and shy. And in that sense, I actually really, really like that live action take on Bruce Wayne as a character, because Batman can come off as kind of douchey. And of course, to Teresa's point of what you said at the top of the show, like, it's all a facade. It's not actually who he is. I get all of that. And it definitely is a projection and not actually who he is as a person. But he does sort of put on, Bruce Wayne does in all the other live action renditions, this bombastic, showboaty persona. And we might see more of that in the second movie. But I actually kind of liked that he was kind of like this nerdy, emo, goth introvert. I thought it was really good. I really quite enjoyed that, to be honest with you. We also got a $5 super chat from Mr. DC Comics. The definitive Batman is Batman the Animated Series. All Hollywood versions should be compared to that. I will disagree with that, Mr. DC Comics. I think that, okay, it is the definitive non-comics interpretation of Batman, but the definitive interpretation of Batman as a character is in the comic books. There's over 80 years of comic books and thousands of stories that have been written about Batman, and really everything is based on that. I do agree that the animated series is probably the best modern interpretation of that, but really the comic books, in my opinion, are they're kind of the baseline that all of this should be based around, not necessarily the animated series. And to my point on that, that's exactly what this movie did. I don't think that this movie was based on the animated series. It borrowed from it, of course. It borrowed from the Arkham games to some extent. It borrowed from the Telltale games, the Batman Telltale games. It borrowed from quite a bit. There were a lot of influences, but fundamentally, this was influenced primarily by The Long Halloween. In every way, it was influenced by The Long Halloween, which is not a multimedia interpretation of the character at all. It is a graphic novel, obviously, and I think that is really the medium that Batman is meant to be interpreted in, is in the comic book realm, but that's just my personal opinion. Jake, welcome to the show, sir. Can you hear us?
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry I am so late. The snow out here is awful, and it took me forever to get home. But
no, you're good. You're good. We were just going around at the start of the stream, and we were giving our brief review. So sort of give your 2-minute review of what you thought of the movie, and then we're about to transition into the conversation of, is the Batman the best Batman movie ever made? And the reason I want to get into that conversation is because I know you're going to get shit for it, for your opinion on it, and I just want to see you get ratioed in the live stream chat, just because that'll be amusing. No, totally kidding. Everybody be nice to Jake, please. Okay, Jake, what did you think of the Batman?
So my experience with the Batman is I sat down and this movie starts, and for about the first 20 minutes, I'm thinking this is the best comic book movie ever made. Like the introduction to Batman, the introduction to Gotham, the introduction to Riddler, all of it is so well crafted and so well done. And what ended up happening is I started to feel like the movie was getting a little bit unfocused. And I don't know that that's necessarily how I would put the overall experience, but I felt that perhaps the movie was focusing very heavily and leaning very much into certain aspects of the Batman character that I do like, but I felt that it was also neglecting other things. For example, I didn't feel that the relationship between Bruce and Alfred was very fleshed out for this movie. And so, yeah.
There was the high point there was the high point with the hospital scene. That was the best part of it, but there wasn't enough of those moments. And I also hate, I'm sorry, I gave the floor to you and I'm interrupting you. I'm being rude. But
no,
I hate this bullshit when it's like, when Bruce is like, you're not my father, Alfred, like, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
yeah,
I fucking hate I hate asshole Bruce Wayne that is unappreciative of Alfred. And it's like, really, it's going to take Alfred getting blown up for you to actually appreciate him and realize that he is basically your father. Instead, until then, you're going to be a douchebag and just be like, oh, you're just my butler. You're not my father. Get the fuck out of here. I hate that. So that really annoyed me. That was my least favorite part of the movie, was that line. And again, the hospital scene sort of remedies that, but it annoys me that they even pulled that in the first place. So I agree with you that the relationship between Bruce and Alfred should have been stronger. And by the way, it would have amplified that moment when he's hauling ass back to Wayne Manor. We had only seen Alfred like twice in the movie before that, and it's like, okay, we know who Alfred is and we don't want him to die, but I feel like for casual audiences, you're just kind of like, oh, oh yeah, his butler's there. Okay, well, is he gonna
his
get blown
butler
up or
that he
not?
apparently hates just dies? Who cares?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Okay, I'm sorry, Jake. Go.
No, you're good. Yeah. So, and my thing with my opinion is I feel like I've come across as way more negative than I mean to, and not just in this discussion, but on Twitter when I came out of the movie. Like my reaction was, I liked it, didn't necessarily love it, and I feel like that provides a very negative connotation, when in actuality, there was a lot that I liked about this movie. I think that Pattinson is the best live-action Batman.
Agree.
I don't know that I've seen enough of his Bruce Wayne to put him up there with Christian Bale quite yet. Some other things about the movie that sort of irritated me was that for a lot of the 3-hour runtime, I felt like it was meandering. I felt like, as much as I liked Colin Farrell as the Penguin, I don't know how different the movie would be if you wrote him out of it. And you contrast that to something like The Dark Knight, where every character and every scene is absolutely pivotal to that movie. The third act I actually really liked in this movie, but it felt pretty disjointed from the rest of the movie, in my opinion. And so ultimately, there was a lot that I liked about the movie. I just didn't feel that it was as focused as it could have been. And I don't know that it focused on a lot of the elements that I wish that it had. And this is my total nitpick, and I have to bring it up every time I talk about this movie. It's becoming a meme. I talked about it on my spoiler stream. I talked about it in my review today. I don't know if you've heard this yet, Kobe. I don't like when movies go to nightclubs, and it's just been a personal nitpick. Like, yeah, I don't like nightclubs just in general. They're not my scene. And so whenever a movie goes to a nightclub, it's kind of whatever, here we go. And it's like not anything that it's nothing that I levy against the film or the quality of the film. So that's not like an actual criticism of it.
Jake, did you have a bad experience in a nightclub? Be honest. Just kidding.
I didn't.
I'm kidding.
I did not.
Go ahead.
I've
go
never.
ahead.
0 out of 10, the nightclub scene.
Like, did you get your heart broken
been...
at a nightclub or something, and then you just like something you need to get off your chest, or?
I haven't been to any because like I just don't like the vibe. I don't like the strobe lights or I don't know. But it's a comparison I would make is with like the Indiana Jones movies, for example. Temple of Doom is my least favorite just because I don't really like the locations that they go to as much. Mm-hmm. And so it's something where like I wouldn't like dock that against the film as much as just say like it's like an episode of a TV show that I just didn't happen to like as much as the others. So it's not that I have a problem with Matt Reeves' iteration of Batman or these characters. I thought the actors were great. I thought that it's the best looking Batman movie, the best sounding Batman movie. From a filmmaker perspective, it's the best one. I just didn't particularly care for the adventure that they went on in this movie. But I think that that's where I'd put it. So I feel like I'm in the middle of the road where I didn't like this particular story per se, but I liked a lot about it. I liked what they did with Riddler, and I liked the characters, and I would like to see what they do going forward.
You know, I think also with this story, you know, like we were talking about a little bit earlier before you hopped on, you know, it is long, and if you're not like hooked initially by that story, then it's going to feel a little long in certain points as well. But the other thing to keep in mind is exactly to your point is that this is a very niche sort of comic book movie. It is not like other comic book movies. And we've seen with Marvel movies in particular, I feel like a very consistent formula. You either like the formula or you don't. And to your point, you either like the locations and sort of the way in which that story pans out or you don't. And but if you like one Marvel movie, you're much more likely to like all the others because they're very comparable in a certain sense. Whereas this movie, let's compare it to like any other live action Batman movie. We can point out a million ways in which it's completely different. So in that sort of sense, just because you're a Batman fan doesn't mean you're necessarily going to appreciate it as much as all other Batman fans. The final point that I'll make in defense of you and your opinion, because I know that some people are going to be triggered about it, is that it really is not everybody's cup of tea, because for all the points that you mentioned and for all the reasons that you mentioned, is that this is not necessarily made for everybody. It is a very, very creatively bold film. It's very pointed in what it's trying to do, is the best way to describe it, really. And I don't fault anyone for not liking it. And really, I think what you're getting at in your review is not that you didn't like it, but that you did not like it as much as everybody else. Because everybody else is coming out of the theater saying, it's the best Batman movie ever. It's 10 out of 10. It's the best thing since sliced bread, right? And I think what you're just saying is you thought the movie was good, right? Like, it was solid. Well,
and I also want to emphasize that I understand why people are giving it 10 out of 10s. And I absolutely am loving that people are. And not only that, I want this movie to do well. I want it to break $1 billion. I don't know that it will based on projections so far, but I hope it does because I want more like this. Even though, like, let me put it this way. Like, did I have a better theater experience during No Way Home? Probably, but I'm not talking about No Way Home even at like 2 days after that movie comes out. Like, this is the movie that it's different. Like you said, it's a very creatively bold film. And I mean, so even though, again, I didn't particularly care for a lot of things in the movie, I'm still interested in talking about it. I'm still interested in seeing it again. I want more comic book movies like this that are different, even if they don't completely stick the landing for me.
Could I interject and talk
Can I interject before you interject? Jake, can you please add Dustin to the call?
Oh, absolutely.
I can't add him.
If I can. I'm on my phone.
Okay, see if you can. Sorry, Teresa, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting to hear his point because I think people's mileage really varies on a film like this, and it is always a risk when a film is really long because if you're not on board with a film and it's long, and I mean really long, then it's going to be torture for you. Like, I know people who were dragged to Endgame who hadn't seen a single Marvel movie, but were dragged to it because it was the movie to see, and who had absolutely no idea what was going on, and it was just 3 hours of torture for them. So I've heard of that happening. So it's a big risk when you do a movie and you make it really long like that, because then it means that whoever is not like really into Batman, like if you have people who do not know anything about Batman and who haven't decided that they like it, like it's not something that they would see, they're only seeing it because it's an icon and it's Batman, it could very well be torture for you seeing this movie if it's really not your thing. Like, I heard there were some people behind us in the first viewing and they were kind of getting rowdy. And I was wondering, are these people who are here and just trying to goof off and have fun with this movie? Are these people who otherwise would never watch something like this and they're having a hard time sitting still in something that's just so long? It is a bit of an acquired taste. It's kind of like comics itself, where comics are niche. The style is niche. Even the way you read comics can be kind of niche. And this is exactly what I would expect and want from a Batman movie, but I'm not sure if it's what mainstream audiences necessarily would want from a Batman movie. Like, a lot of people, this is going around a lot. A lot of people think that would be inappropriate for kids, and that a lot of parents aren't going to want to take their kids to this. And I definitely see that. I saw kids in my theater, and I was thinking of that as well. And I'm actually, there's another channel I follow called Geekvolution, and the guy had his son come on, and he was loving the movie, but his son wasn't really into that. I don't really think it's a movie that kids who are looking at superhero movies are going to enjoy that much, and it's not what parents who have just seen the regular Marvel fare where everything's family friendly and there's a certain formula and everything usually ends well, and there's certain areas they're not going to go. What's major about this movie is, like, things will explode. Batman will not save the day. Things will go wrong. People will die, and it's not what you would expect. So I was thinking that this movie might make $1 billion because of the hype around it, but now I'm questioning that, because as wonderful as the movie is to me, I think that it does cater to maybe a smaller audience than something like Spider-Man No Way Home was the ultimate crowd pleaser, and I think that this movie is one that maybe put the artistic part of it first, and the respect to the comics and the lore and the cinematography. It put that stuff first rather than necessarily being a crowd pleaser. So it's going to be a little bit more of I don't want to even call it niche. It's not going to be everyone's thing. And so somebody else tweeted out this might be a $900 million movie if it has legs. I still think it's going to do very well. It just might not be the $1 billion deal I thought it was going to be.
I think it'll do 750 to 800, somewhere in that range. Which, by the way, I said it was going to be under $1 billion, and everybody on Twitter was like, "No, you're wrong, And I'm telling you, it's going to get under $1 billion. But anyway, go ahead, Jake. Oh, also, Dustin's in the call, so Jake, you go, and then we're going to go to Dustin's review.
Sounds good. I was just going to say, too, that I absolutely think that that's a good point, that it is a pretty niche community, to a degree. Comics are also very mainstream, but I think not only are you looking at this is a film very much geared toward people who like Batman comics, I also think that it's geared toward people who like very individual Batman comics. To me, this film felt a lot like Batman Year One, and I've always been pretty open that Batman Year One is not my favorite comic. There's other Batman comics that I like more. There's different stories that I want to see adapted. And so I just feel that this movie was a very specific Batman story, and it wasn't necessarily the one that I wanted to see. With that said, again, I do think Pattinson is by far the best interpretation of the character seen in live action. So I just don't want to come across as sounding like there was nothing that I liked, or that I felt that this movie did a disservice to the character or the story. It just wasn't the one that I was personally hoping to see out of it.
All right, we've got some super chats to get to, but before we get to those, some questions Taladia has requested for Dustin's review, the long-awaited Dustin review. And honestly, Dustin, we were talking over chat. I'm surprised you didn't hate this movie. I thought you were going to hate it. I really, really did. What did you think of the Batman, Dustin?
It's pretty good. I really only have 2 complaints with the movie. Everything else is pretty geared towards me, honestly.
What's your review out of 10?
I have it. Give me a second. Now, to most people, my reviews seem harsh, but to me, barely any movie is a 10, barely any movie is a 9. So, what I gave Batman.
I mean, technically,
I have
average
this.
is 5.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I scale mine. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
So that's
which is good.
Good. That's good.
It's good.
All right. What are the 2
That's
things
good.
you didn't like about it?
The 2 things. Okay, so this is spoiler, right?
Yes.
Joker is such a cop-out. I hated it. This is coming from someone who doesn't like repeated casting or variations of a character that just play on each other. So what I mean by that is in the last 12 years, we've had 5 different on-screen portrayals of Joker. And frankly, he's just a bit overused at this point. I get he's Batman's archenemy, he's his rival, but they could have saved him. And the other big thing is honestly just the length of the movie. It's too long. There's way too much filler in it. The opening hour, I believe, could have been trimmed down to maybe 25 minutes.
Damn.
And still have
That's
the same, like...
That's a lot of trimming. Are you sure about that?
I mean, I'm sure I don't remember a lot of this movie just because some scenes dragged on so long. But these scenes...
I agree with that.
What makes it like a 7 to me is this is one of the first comic book movies in a long time that I feel like hasn't insulted my intelligence as a viewer.
Yeah.
And it's a dark take. It's more Frank Miller than I was expecting. Year 1 inspirations, whatever. When Zack Snyder said his Batman was Frank Miller inspired, I don't think he knew what that meant, because this is definitely more Frank Miller inspired than any of Zack Snyder's works on the character.
I'm curious to
Not saying his take is bad, but
I'm curious to know what you guys thought about... Well, okay, let me get to the Super Chats really quick, and then I want to talk about the Joker and whether we felt he should or should not have been included, and then I want to hit on whether or not Batman is the best Batman movie ever made. Some geek guy with the $10 Super Chat, thank you for the $10. I just watched the Batmab twice. I believe you meant to say Batman. Twice, and I loved it. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10, even though there are many plot holes I noticed. Like, how did Batman survive having a bomb blow up in his face? Not only did Batman survive having a bomb blown up in his face, Alfred did too. Multiple people were blown up in their face, a bomb literally in their hands, and it not even a lost limb. They're just like, they got to shake it off. That was some plot armor, some thick plot armor there. Just some geek guy. And also, one thing that I love about this movie, which I am not going to belabor too much because everybody gets upset whenever I say that I like when Batman doesn't kill. Okay, as I said, I'm a big comic book nerd, big comic book fan. If you've been reading the comic book since 1941, excluding Elseworld stories like The Dark Knight Returns, Batman doesn't kill. So when I see every single live action movie, Batman is blowing people up, calling in strafing runs like he's in the fucking Air Force, and Batman v Superman. I like Batman v Superman, but it's just a little bit over the top for me. I really liked in this movie that Batman actually had his no kill rule, and he didn't belabor it. They didn't belabor it. They didn't make it this like cringy point of like, of course he has the one line where he says like, you're going to be just like them if you kill. There's that one line, but they don't like belabor the point. They just show Batman doesn't kill. He has this code. That's how he does things. But another big piece of plot armor, just some geeky guy, as we discussed. That Penguin chase scene, he flips him 17 million times. There's no way he survived that. And then he's just standing there. And then he's like, they tape up his legs and he's just standing there completely fine. Like, dude, you would be so dead at the bare minimum, like severely incapacitated. And I know that fat suit is thick, I know that gives you a little bit of a cushion, Colin Farrell, but that was a bit ridiculous. But I agree, just some geeky guy. But here's the other thing, geeky guy, is that plot holes never really make or break a movie. They really just don't. Like, a lot of the best movies ever made do have plot holes, or have things about them that maybe don't make sense if you think about it too deeply. But really, movies are about the story that they tell, the way that they make you feel, and viewers and audiences, at least I am personally very willing to overlook plot holes. I can go into plot holes that are in The Dark Knight that don't make any sense. But am I, when I'm watching it for the 40th time, thinking about that? No, I'm thinking about how amazing Heath Ledger is and how fucking amazing how amazing Chris Nolan is. And those are the things that I'm thinking about, not necessarily some of the plot holes in it. But I would agree with you, Geeky Guy. Greg with a $2 super chat. Quick, Iragen, give us your Batman reading order. I don't know, Iragen, wouldn't you just say the order that they should be? Like Batman Year One first, then Long Halloween.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
I don't have it listed out. Like I mean, it's like Year One, and then it's like The Man Who Laughs, right? Which is the introduction to Joker,
then
and
Long
it's kind
Halloween,
of this follow-up. Then you do Long Halloween, then Dark Victory. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Teresa,
I don't know.
Greg sent $2 more in. He wants you to give us your reading order. Is your reading order different than chronological?
It's pretty much what Jake said. It's like go Year One, and then you have to do The Man Who Laughs, and then you do Long Halloween, and then you do Dark Victory. And then I actually saw a listing a while where someone took all of the graphic novels of Batman and put them in chronological order. Like, this is where No Man's Land goes, and this is where this story goes, and this is where Two-Face really comes in. So like I'd have to go look that up and find it. I would like I'm gonna actually be getting Kelly some comics, so because she's read some Batman comics, but she has not read Long Halloween. She's gonna be reading probably Long Halloween, but I would just she's read one Batman comic. But I'm gonna give her Man Who Laughs.
The one Jacob Berry sent me for Christmas. That's the only one I've ever read.
Man Who Laughs and Long Halloween. Like, that's kind of my reading order is and there's like some pre-Year One stuff you can read even then, but that's actually, I think Batman is I've said this many, many times. Batman is like the most accessible superhero to get into because all of his most famous stories, the best ones, are in like graphic novels, self-contained stories, and you can actually find a reading order. Like, you can't necessarily do that with Spider-Man because all the stories considered the best are like intertwined in the single issue to issue comics, and there's like always a subplot or something running through it. Even if you find like a collected edition, it doesn't feel like a complete story. But like Batman, they even have box sets right now with like Year One and Long Halloween, and like these are the two you need to read together. But you need to read The Man Who Laughs in between that, because obviously the Joker exists and Batman already knows him in Long Halloween, but Man Who Laughs is explaining how Batman met the Joker, and it's really twisted and really dark, but it's really funny because Joker is really funny. But yeah, that would be my reading order, generally what Jake said. And you can find lists online and just simplify it if you need to.
So Dustin hit on in his review about the Joker. I wanted to touch on that. Also, I have a tweet that is getting some engagement. I said, the Batman 2, Court of Owls and the Joker, please. Obviously, they tease at the end of this movie the Joker, okay, right? Like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, cool. So the Joker's going to be in the second movie. It's the same thing as the Batman Begins sort of situation, right, where they're teeing him up for the second movie. It didn't surprise me. I thought it might have been cool to save him for the third movie, but there's no way in hell they would go this trilogy without using the Joker. Matt Reeves is 100% going to want to make his mark on the Batman lore and mythos forever, in the same way that Chris Nolan did with Heath Ledger, and he's going to want to use the Joker. So, but with that being said, I'm seeing a lot of people saying they don't want the Joker, sort of reiterating what Dustin said. Degenerate J actually has the top comment under my thread. My tweet is 3,500 likes, so clearly a lot of people agree with me that people want the Joker. But then Jay responded and is getting a bunch of likes as well, where he said, I know I'm in the minority, but I really wanted to wait longer on Joker. Every other day it feels like there's a new live-action Joker, sort of getting to Dustin's point. And it did seem that a lot of people were really excited for the Court of Owls, but I think one thing that we also have to consider that we lose sight of is we say as hardcore fans that are reading all the comic books and we're seeing the 15,000 different spin-off Batman books with different versions of the Joker and different renditions, and the comic books a few years ago literally had 3 Jokers all in one. Like they do crazy shit all the time and use Joker as much as possible to get as many sales as possible. But we also have to remember that to the average Joe on the street, the Joker is Batman in many ways. And when you think of Batman, what do you think of? You go up to some random person on the street. You know, they've probably seen 1989 Batman, they've seen The Dark Knight, and maybe those are the only 2 Batman movies they've ever seen because those are the most popular. And they haven't seen the animated series. They don't play the Arkham games, and they certainly haven't seen the Joker, the spin-off movie. If they're not a hardcore comic books fan, if they're just an average guy, my dad or something, right? Like my dad knows who the Joker is. He'd be interested in seeing the Joker. He's familiar with Heath Ledger and that rendition of the Joker and the 1989 Joker. But I think if he were to watch this movie, he would probably say, where the hell's the Joker? Like the Joker's the main Batman villain, right? So I think that WB kind of has to use him, whether we want him to or not. But my question is, did you guys want that to be the case? Do you want the Joker in this trilogy, or would you prefer that WB not have used him? I was a little bit surprised to actually see him in this movie. And I don't mean once I saw the leak, I knew he was in it. But I mean even before that. Like, if you had told me 2 years ago that they were going to have the Joker in this movie, even as a cameo, I would have been pretty surprised. But nonetheless, they did.
Can I?
Yes, please go, Dustin.
I was actually going to say, I think I've known Joker would be in this movie for about 2 years, ever since Barry Keoghan was attached to the project.
I think it's Keegan.
He's Irish, so it's kind of like you can pronounce it either way. But he fits this character. I think he'll be great in the role. He's not the problem at all. His part in the movie is very well acted for what it is. My main rebuttal to everyone in the comments really saying that, there have been 5 different Batmans, whatever, is, Green Goblin is Spider-Man's main villain, right? He's the Joker to Spider-Man's Batman, and he has only been done in live action once.
You could make the argument that Venom is.
2 times, technically. Venom's more of a, recent creation since the 90s.
That's true. That's true.
He's kind of morphed into an anti-hero over time, but I get that point as well.
You're right. This is an aside. Continue your point. I'm sorry.
But I feel like if more Matt Reeves and the creative team showed some restraint on how they would have handled this, even in the past 5 years, we've had 3 different on-screen portrayals of this character. That's 4 if you count the Gotham TV show. I just think that's a bit much,
Kelly,
at least in this short time span.
Kelly, what did you think about the Joker and using the Joker this early?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of torn on it, honestly, because I didn't really care that the Joker was in it at the end. Like, it didn't bother me, and I also didn't really care. It didn't really enhance the movie, but it didn't really detract from the movie either way for me. I agree with your point that for the average viewer, for many people, the last Joker they've seen is Heath Ledger. For many people who don't follow this franchise or who aren't, hyper nerds like myself or like the rest of us, they're not paying attention to this. And so, I mean, I would dare say for a lot of people, this may be the most recent Batman they've seen since the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yep, 100%.
So I think that it really doesn't matter at this point. I think we may have fatigue of the Joker because we know about all of these things, but I didn't pay attention to a lot of the Suicide Squad movies and stuff like that. So for myself, I knew that there was a couple other Jokers. I didn't realize there were 5. I'm just not following.
There were 4. But that's looking just as the theatrical stuff.
Anyway, this is
I love how you just ignored that. You just kept going.
Well, this is what happens when you bring the 2 sisters that look exactly alike on the show. I wish Teresa's camera was on so that people could get confused. But I guess my point is I just think that there's a lot of people that just don't care and that haven't seen another Heath Ledger, don't identify Joker as anything other than Heath Ledger or what they saw in the animated series, because those are probably, I would say, that two of the most famous iterations of the Joker, and these other things are just considered side issues or almost like cosplay Jokers, as opposed to this is the Joker for me, if that makes sense.
Okay, I've got a question from David that I wanted to touch on. Would you agree that the last 45 minutes falls apart? I'm going to send this to Jake and then Teresa, because, Jake, you did have an issue with the third act, right?
Yes.
Would you say it falls apart? That's a strong word, David.
No.
Come on. It doesn't fall apart.
No. No, it doesn't fall apart. I think that it's a bit abrupt. I feel like it's not, like, yes, there were hints leading up to it, but I don't feel like it was the natural conclusion that the film was building to. It sort of felt like I flipped the channel to a different Batman movie, but I don't know. That was just my take. Like, the ending felt very abrupt. Maybe on a repeat viewing, I'll be more okay with it because I'll know that twist is coming. It just didn't feel like what the film was building toward, which I think was the point. It was supposed to be a big surprise, and it worked. I just felt like it sort of brushed all of the nuance of the rest of the film under the rug and kind of became something different, which I was okay with because I actually thought that in many ways the third act was the strongest.
Really? In what sense?
At least from an action perspective, I think that
Definitely.
That's, yeah. I feel, because the first two acts of the film are very, very good. I like the slow burn and the build up. And it was kind of odd because you look at the Batmobile chase, which in my opinion, it's the best Batmobile chase in a Batman movie. It almost feels kind of out of place just with the rest of the tone of the movie. Like, I've heard some reviews say that it felt almost contractually attached to the film.
Right.
And I kind of agree. Like, it's a very action heavy set piece that doesn't really line up with the slow noir detective mystery film. It's this big action moment. And so I feel like the third act gets very action heavy. And so I liked the fight scene in the rafters. I liked the flood. I thought it was all very visually cool. I just felt like it was very different than what had come before.
I also feel like a lot of younger fans are not going to necessarily resonate with the ending as well, because there's not any like grand boss fight with any of the villains, with like Riddler or Penguin. The ending, I think it could be perceived as anticlimactic by some. That would be the opinion of someone like Grace Randolph, for instance, has made this point. I didn't feel like that was the case, but I certainly understand that argument. Teresa, what do you think about the third act?
Okay, and can I give my little 2 cents on the Joker thing?
Of course,
okay.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I changed topics. That's right.
That's okay. The third act, I was, especially on the second viewing, really scrutinizing that because I've seen that come up a bit with people. I heard someone say they felt the third act came out of nowhere. They used a different euphemism for that, but it came out of nowhere. Here's what I think might be a problem with it. I can see is that Riddler has a specific motive where he's going after these people who he sees as liars and he sees as corrupt, or he's, and that's why he's killing them and using Batman to get rid of these people. I'm not sure, and I would have to watch it again. I'm not sure if I buy that he would need to flood Gotham. And in some ways that does feel like the obligatory set piece at the end of a big movie. But the reason why it worked for me is it feeds into Batman's character arc, where with that I'm vengeance line from the Riddler thug, and then him being put in a situation where he realizes the negative effect his persona has had on Gotham and needing to change that perception, and being in the situation, like you said earlier, that he needed to be the firefighter there. All that worked for me, and so all that kind of all that worked for me and kind of patched up what I would say is a little bit wonky leading into it, because I saw the point that it made, but I just feel like I would have to watch it again, like, because I don't see the Riddler's motivations that they gave him and what he was doing really feeding into flooding Gotham. So I can see that point a bit, even though with what it did for his arc, it didn't ruin it for me. As for the Joker, I just want to first throw in some information I don't think people here have. So first of all, Matt Reeves has come out, and I knew this beforehand from a rumor, that the Joker won't necessarily be in the sequel, actually. there's been this rumor that's been going around that this Gotham PD show for HBO Max or the Arkham Asylum show, they seem like they're shuffling out what they want the show to be, that it's going to adapt The Man Who Laughs. And he's confirmed that Joker and Batman have already met in this universe as of the Batman timeline, and that the rumor is that one of the shows is going to go back and explore that, and that this is not a Joker that's fully formed, and he's going to develop into who we know as the character. And he's said various other things about what their take on the character is for this version, because they've already nailed a lot of that down. And it's not uber realistic. It's not Heath Ledger. It's very comics accurate, but I'm not going to get into that so much here. In terms of the scene, I can completely understand why someone would say that that was obligatory and fan service and not necessary, but it didn't bother me. I was fine with what we saw of the character. I agree with you that the Joker is overused thing really only matters to fans who are reading everything and seeing everything that comes out. But in some ways, even to me, and I said this when I talked to you about Barry Keoghan's casting back when the rumors were coming out. Right. I was wary about it because I felt like we were getting too many Jokers. But at the same time, he's almost like the first version of the character we've gotten since The Dark Knight, because we essentially had a dud and then an Elseworlds take who wasn't really the Joker. Jared Leto's Joker, if you've read the insane things that David Ayer has said about the Joker, like, he does not know who the character is. And then add that to Jared Leto overacting and then having most of his scenes cut. I don't consider that the Joker, and most people don't. And then we had Joaquin Phoenix, and all due respect to how good his performance was and how well made that movie was, but that was not actually the Joker. Todd Phillips has admitted he had his art movie that was going to explore mental illness that he wanted to make, couldn't get it greenlit because people have such a difficult time greenlighting original movies these days. So he attached it. He admitted he did this because he was getting a lot of hate for doing the Joker, and so he admitted his intentions. He just attached a big franchise name to it, like Joker and Gotham and Batman and buzzwords like that. And then just, it was his artistic movie with Gotham DC skin just to try to get it out there. So, I mean, there's similarities there with Joker's character because there's just similarities with his character in general, in psychopaths and mental illness and whatnot. And it's a good movie, but it's not the Joker. And it's interesting how Joker 2019 was like the hot topic and the big hype, and there was so much Batman fan speculation about that. And now maybe it's just my perspective, but no one talks about that movie anymore ever. People talk about Heath Ledger's portrayal more than they talk about Joaquin Phoenix, even though he's the most recent. So it's like, I don't really see that we've actually gotten a Joker who's actually being the Joker since Heath Ledger's. Like, we had a dud, and then we had the not really Joker. It's like Great Value vanilla wafers or something. It's not really the Joker. It's Shasta Cola and whatnot. It's not really the Joker.
I agree with that.
And
I agree.
And so I've thought about this a little bit more, and I'm like, this is technically the first time I've seen a Joker that I would be expecting to see on screen. And some of the things that Matt Reeves has said, not inaccurate to his character, things that I'm not sure if that's going to be 100% what I want. Like, he said that they're going to explore a Joker who is always deformed in the face and like has like a permy smile and like hates himself for it, which is a take that's been done in the comics. I'm not sure if that's what I want from the character, but it is comics accurate. And so I just don't have a problem with it. I'm curious to see what they do with it. I'm more just questioning if they do it on streaming first, if it's going to be good, because sometimes they overhype these streaming shows and they're just not as high quality as the theatrical. I'm sorry I went long on that. I have a lot to say when it comes to the Joker's character, but I'll let someone else go.
As long as they don't put it on the CW, then I'll watch. If it's on the CW, I'm out. I'm not watching.
From the creators of Batwoman.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Okay, two things that I wanted to go over before we end the stream. One, again, what we're saving for the end of the discussion, which is the Batman the best Batman movie ever made? Please vote in the poll in the chat if you haven't already. We're going to discuss that at the very end. But one final topic I wanted to touch on before we get there, and I just wanted each of us to touch on this a little bit, is Batman 2, and I suppose the Batman 3, but with the Batman 2 in particular, the Court of Owls let's talk about that. I want to just get general predictions, what you guys would like to see in the sequel film. For me in particular, I would like to see the Court of Owls. I think that would be great to see. But at the same point, I have thought about it, and really the Court of Owls, that storyline has already been utilized actually in this movie, because the whole notion with the Court of Owls and the whole idea behind it, not to get too deep into it, but it is very much so like exposing the corruption deep within the root of Gotham. It's about sort of exposing this sort of like oligarchy of these like crime families and these like mega billionaires in Gotham, and it's basically just the Court of Owls is just they're all in a secret society, and basically that's the whole idea of the Court of Owls, right? Whereas this movie, like, they already basically killed all the top crime family people, and the Riddler basically already kind of made this point that the Court of Owls make, and the whole idea of the Court of Owls to a certain extent. Like, the Riddler is the antithesis of the Court of Owls. So could you really do the Court of Owls at this point when you've already explored the whole notion of the Waynes maybe aren't as good as we thought they were, and like, oh, Gotham is super corrupt from like deep within, and it like. I just feel like sort of a lot of the themes that you would touch on in a Court of Owls storyline have already been touched on by the Riddler, because of the direction they went with the Riddler, which I thought was a strong direction. I just think that there's some overlap there, and I think it might be tricky to use the Court of Owls without like belaboring the point of like, okay, we get it, Gotham's corrupt and all the rich people in it are awful. Like, we get it. I just don't really know what else the Court of Owls could really add to that. Whereas when I think about the Joker is always so dynamic. Like, he's so versatile in every way, and you can mold him into any storyline that you really want to, and he can work with any other villain because he's, just the wild card factor, right? And no pun intended. So I'm a little bit trepidatious about where they will go from here. And the one thing that I would say is just like when we saw Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, I really like seeing that, because we had never seen I guess we had seen Bane. 1997 Batman does not count. It just doesn't count. It's fake. But you get what I'm saying. Like, I really do want to see this universe's take on the Joker, because I've been so impressed with what they did with the Riddler and Penguin. I would maybe be a little bit disappointed if it was a Clayface, for instance. Like, I don't really know how much you could do with somebody like that. Whereas I could see them utilizing Ra's al Ghul. That would be really interesting. I could see Mr. Freeze actually fitting really well into this universe, especially if they're going to try to humanize the villains, which they certainly did with the Riddler in this film. They humanized him quite a bit, and they tried to make you empathize with him. And Mr. Freeze is someone that you can really do that with quite well. So I could see Matt Reeves going in that direction. I personally do hope for the Joker, but I'm curious to know what you guys think about that and what you'd like to see in Batman 2. Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've thought about this quite a bit, and I feel that, to an extent, I feel like this movie did very good with the Riddler, but I also feel like it perhaps, I don't know, it made a lot of potential villains not as interesting to me for sequels. I think that a lot of plot points that they touched on, such as the Waynes having dirt on them, they didn't really stick to them, and they made it pretty clear by the end of this movie, like, no, the Waynes were still good. No, Alfred's not dead. He's fine. And I feel that what they did with Riddler was sort of a culmination of multiple Batman villains. So for the sequel, I don't really want to see Anarchy. I don't want to see Hush. I don't really, like you mentioned, need to see the Court of Owls. And that's not to say that they couldn't go back and revisit these villains later, but I feel that it would feel very repetitive and redundant. I agree. So I'm in agreement with you that I think for the follow-up, I want them to do something tonally, or not tonally, but I don't know. I guess that's like the right usage of the word, but not completely, because I want the movie to continue to be dark and grounded and have the same vibe that this one did. But I'd like to see them do a very different story. I'd like to see a character like Mr. Freeze or Poison Ivy or Man-Bat take center stage and do a very different type of film. And I think that there's a lot of potential. You could do an Arkham Asylum, you could do a film that takes place in one night. You could do more of a horror film with Man-Bat or something. Like, there's very different ways that they could take a sequel. And I just don't want to see them retread what they've already done with Riddler, just with someone wearing a different mask.
Kelly, what do you think? what would you like to see in Batman 2?
Mr. Freeze is definitely at the top of my list as far as villains go. I really liked, Teresa, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's one of the Batman movies that's actually about Mr. Freeze, and that's the
Yeah,
one
it's Batman Sub-Zero. It includes
Yeah,
like Batgirl and all that.
that's one of my favorite Batman stories. And I would love to see that story, perhaps, if not retold in live action, maybe plot points gleaned from that and brought into live action. I was thinking about Two-Face, and I really like the way they handled Two-Face in the animated series, but I really don't want to see him again right away. Kind of for the not. It's just hard because I can't get the Dark Knight Two-Face out of my head, and so I just feel like I need a little bit more distance from that before. In that case, this is an issue I talk about or in my upcoming video, which you guys can all go watch over on my channel on Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. I talk about how there's a lot of complaints about kind of the race bending that was done in this movie, and most of that I was completely fine with. Normally when I have a problem with that is when it actually changes a character or changes an important point of the plot in a negative way. So like we saw with they changed the race of Human Torch in one of the versions of the Fantastic Four. They changed his race but left Invisible Woman the same race, so it kind of damages those two characters because they're supposed to be biological siblings, and it doesn't make any sense. And there's cases like when you changed Mary Jane's race in Spider-Man. Now she doesn't have red hair. They didn't even bother to like dye her hair red or anything. So that bothers me when you change a very integral physical feature of a character that kind of is a, like I said, it's an integral physical feature, or it changes something about relationships of characters. I don't like that. But in the case of this Batman movie, I loved the guy they got to play Jim Gordon. I thought it was fantastic. I thought race had zero to do with that character, and I thought he was fantastic as he was in this movie. It may be one of my favorite Jim Gordon iterations of all time.
He might be my favorite Gordon of all time, to be honest. He was
I as well.
Baller. He was so good as Gordon. And
Yeah.
somebody was asking me like how he compares to the Gary Oldman one from The Dark Knight, and they're just very different. Like I think the relationship that Bruce and Gordon have in this film is a lot better than the relationship that Batman and Gordon have in The Dark Knight. They're playing very different Gordon interpretations, though, to some extent. There's still sort of the same underlying basis, but I really, really like the relationship and banter that Batman had with Gordon. Even just the small nuances, right, of Gordon calling Batman dude. He's like, that was just really, really interesting how they viewed each other. And that whole thing, like, where he's like, you got to punch me in the face. And then he wails into him and then doesn't even apologize for it later. And they're just like,
hold that punch. I did.
I know. I just thought that was so great. Anyway, I'm sorry, continue. But I just wanted to weigh in on the Gordon thing, because I did really, really like Gordon. And we didn't talk much about what we thought about Penguin. But Colin Farrell underwent this insane transformation to be Penguin. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, no, I guess my point is I wouldn't mind if my point on the Two-Face thing is if they do Two-Face again, it might not be a bad idea to do a little race bending there and have another nationality play him, just so that we have a visual distance from the last guy who played him, who was obviously white. That was my point there. But yeah, I loved the funny thing about Penguin is just because I actually took some time to watch The Sopranos while I was in Nashville at a friend's house, and their favorite show, the friends that I was staying with, one of their favorite shows is The Sopranos, and I watched a lot of The Sopranos when I was there. And so to have come from watching that to then seeing Penguin, I was like, it's Tony Soprano. That's all this is.
I love that.
And again, with my Italian background, with Teresa's Italian background, and with Slick Moff's Italian background, we're just going to start the Mafia here and now. That's the big announcement tonight on this live stream. You heard it here first. The Slick Mafia, he's signed up. Kelly and Teresa are now going to be a part of this. And I'll be heading up the office in Rome, and Teresa will be heading up the office in San Francisco, and that'll be we're gonna push some drops or whatever.
We should just change live stream name whenever we three are on to just the Slick Mafia. That would be perfect.
Yeah, it's not like a cute metaphor. It's an actual mafia. I don't know if you guys are aware. You're like actually in a gang. Like this is super illegal. Teresa, what do you want to see in Batman 2?
Well, when I was coming out of the theater, like right when the credits were rolling, I was thinking this is a universe where I would like to see a take on all the major Batman characters because all of them were done so well. I talked to Kelly about this a little bit last night, that Catwoman wasn't exactly what I was looking for on a subjective level, not exactly what I was looking for in a Catwoman, even though she was very well cast. I won't get into that too much because I'll go long on it, but Matt Reeves has been talking a lot about Mr. Freeze, and I just think that it's high time we got a really actual good take on his character, because that is just such an iconic Batman story, and I think it's high time that we just got a great take that focused on his character. I'm not as hyped about Court of Owls, specifically because that is one of the very few major Batman famous stories I have not read. I'm going to read it, but I know the premise. I'm just on a subjective level, I'm more interested in like seeing Robin and Mr. Freeze in a sequel than Court of Owls, or like I'm really hyped about the Joker. You can tell because I've talked about it so much, but at the same time, it was what kind of was making me a little bit afraid of this film. Is like I've already seen Catwoman done many times. I've already seen Riddler done. I've already seen Penguin done. I mean, I want Mr. Freeze to get the spotlight. I want Clayface to get the spotlight, or Poison Ivy, and especially to just, we've never had a kid teen Robin on the screen. It's been over 20 years since Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, and they cast like an adult to play him. I'm like, It's high time we got a Robin. Like, why haven't we done this? Why are we so afraid of doing this? I can see this is a heightened universe enough where I think you could pretty much do all the characters, and I'm looking forward to see that. And I think we're going to get at least all of the major Batman characters eventually, because they said this isn't just going to be a trilogy. This is going to be a Batverse. There's going to be a lot of different things. I would absolutely die if we got an Arkham Asylum show that has like Dr. Hugo Strange and Dr. Quinzel and like Dr. Crane as like the main doctors, and then we explore like different villains through that. I would love that. For a sequel, just setting Joker aside, I would be interested in Mr. Freeze and Robin. If they don't bring Robin into the immediate sequel, I will be incredibly disappointed. I will say that.
All right, last thing wanted to touch on. Is The Batman the best Batman movie ever made? Yes or no? Jake, starting with you.
I think that this is a complicated answer. Like
That's a no. Dodge.
No. Hear me out.
Just kidding.
I think it is, and it also isn't. It is, in many respects, the best Batman movie ever. I also think that in other respects, those first two Nolan films are. I think that they touch on different things. And I think that if you took this Batman and put him in The Dark Knight with his no-kill rule and with the tone and the cinematography and the audio, then yes, that would be, for me, the best Batman movie ever. So I think that from a technical perspective, this is the best Batman movie ever. I think from a more subjective sense, I feel like we need to see one or two more films in this universe. And then I think that I would be able to safely say which one is my favorite, because right now it's between Reeves and Nolan in regards to which one has brought forth my favorite interpretation. Really, my biggest hang-up with Nolan's take on the character is that he doesn't do a great job with his no-kill rule. He talks about it a few times, but then he's butchering people.
And the whole thing of like, I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you. That is such a dodge, and that is not at all how Batman is in the comic books. Like, Batman saves the Joker at every chance that he can to save his life.
Gotta save his buddy. Gotta save his best friend and buddy.
Yeah, exactly. That he has a cute little toxic relationship with and secretly loves. But but yeah, that's a really weird thing where it's like, yeah, you're on this train and it's gonna explode and you're gonna like, be blown up into a million different pieces, and I'm just gonna let that happen. Is like not you're just not gonna see that in the comic books. But so I completely agree.
So Yeah, so I feel that the Nolan films on some individual moments really do not get the character well. However, I feel that for me, as of right now, The Dark Knight encapsulated the spirit of Batman better for me. However, I would say that this is, I don't know, I think that this movie got him way more right. So I would say that yes, if I'm not looking at it subjectively or with my bias, I would say yes, this is the best Batman movie ever made. I do still think that The Dark Knight is a better, it has a tighter script that I think is a bit more focused. But yeah, again, like I'm sorry. I'm like all over the place. I should probably go see the movie again before I start like ranting about it like this.
But what you're getting at is like, it's kind of a loaded question. Is it the best Batman movie ever? What does that exactly mean? It means different things to different people. Some people might say, oh, it's the best Batman. Does it mean like, if I'm going to watch the movies back to back to back to back, rate them from 1 to 10, what is the best? Well, in that case, I would probably say The Dark Knight. I think to your point, you've mentioned this, like there are pacing issues with this film, in my opinion. There are scenes that could have been cut. There are scenes that are not as eventful. To your point, the Penguin, I don't know, he adds a certain amount to the sort of like lore and mythos of building out this world. He's integral in a certain sense. And then in another sense, to your point, if it was a Chris Nolan movie, Chris Nolan would have cut that character out. Like Chris Nolan would say the way that he approaches filmmaking is like, that character does not serve a purpose to the plot, so therefore they have to go. And that's just the way that he approaches it. Every single character that you see in The Dark Knight has a purpose and moves the story forward. Whereas in this case, the Penguin, it did kind of feel like he was there to like add to the lore of the universe and to like build out the universe a little bit. And same with to some extent with some of the other characters that were included that were not necessarily needed. I wouldn't say they're superfluous necessarily, but they were less essential than other characters, I guess is the best way to put it. So it is a different approach to filmmaking. And so in that sense, The Dark Knight might be objectively a better movie. If I had to line them up, like one night I have to pick, do I want to watch The Batman or do I want to watch Dark Knight? Well, I'm biased because The Dark Knight's like my favorite movie ever. I've seen it over 40 times. So I would probably pick The Dark Knight because I love Heath Ledger and the Joker and all of that. But is the Batman the best live action rendition of Batman as a character? Yes. I prefer Robert Pattinson as Batman over Christian Bale as Batman. So in that sense, I would say the Batman is the best Batman movie of all time. So it's kind of a loaded question, and it really depends on what exactly what we're talking about here. And I'm sort of torn on it as well. So I don't know. Kelly, what do you think?
That's basically my perspective as well. I think that this Batman iteration is the best Batman iteration that I've seen in live action form. I think that the only thing that sets The Dark Knight apart from everything else is Heath Ledger's Joker. And I think it just going back to what my original statement at the beginning of the stream was, I think this is the first time that I really felt Batman owned the movie as opposed to the villain. You came for Bane or you came for Heath Ledger's Joker, you came for whatever, Raj Al Ghul, whatever.
Raish.
Whatever the heck his name is, you came for in previous iterations of Batman movies, especially live action ones. I'm always, at least for me personally, I'm coming for the villain and less for Batman because I haven't really seen Batman as the lead. This is the first time I came for Batman in that opening scene. And if you guys are not aware that this is a spoiler stream at this late hour in the game, I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with you. So at the very beginning of the movie, that opening scene where the mob guys are trying to beat up on the Asian guy, hashtag stop Asian hate and all the rest of it. And Batman comes out of the staircase in the dark, and he comes out. I was scared of Batman for the first time in my life. And I was like, he's going to come get me. Like, and then he comes and wipes out all of these guys and everything. And that, it was like the first time that I felt like this is a Batman movie. This isn't a Joker movie. This isn't a movie about Bane. This isn't a movie about Rachel falling out of a building. This isn't any of that. This is a Batman movie. And he held his own throughout the entire film. Yeah, we didn't really see a whole lot of Bruce Wayne. I couldn't care less about Bruce Wayne at this point. And I'm gonna call out this Knighton guy over here in the
Oh,
chat. Yeah, I'm
Knighton!
calling somebody out here about this masking business. I'm not a huge fan of Bruce Wayne, but just as my final point, I'm a huge fan of the relationship in Justice League between Batman and Wonder Woman. And this is the first time that I was actually like, this is the Batman that I would like to see that relationship happen. The whole thing with Batfleck and all and Wonder Woman and all that was garbage. Throw it all out. I would prefer to see Wonder Woman and Batman get together as opposed to Catwoman and Batman get together. And I'm going to just leave it there. And all you can roast me in the chat.
Heresy.
I'm trying to
Stone
remember.
her. Stone her.
I'm trying to remember in the Snyder cut, is the Batman and Wonder Woman stuff still in there, or was that only a Joss Whedon thing? If I recall, it's in both versions.
That was Whedon.
Huh?
That was mostly Whedon. Like made it a bigger thing.
He did.
Yeah,
that was where
that
that awkward scene where they're like in there and they're like taking their clothes off or whatever, and like Batman's like taking his pads off. That was a Joss Whedon scene. I don't think that was in the Snyder cut, right?
That's right.
I'm almost sure.
We all know that was a Joss Whedon scene without even having to confirm that, because we all know who Joss Whedon is. So
yeah, he's a little creepy. All right, Teresa, go ahead. Sorry.
I guess I'm the rest one who says, I agree with everything Kelly has said, and I've actually been just thinking back and forth on this. It's a big thing for me when I go to a movie, like a big hyped up movie, a second time, and it's just as strong for me, if not stronger, the second time when I watch it. And so this is probably the strongest contender we've had against The Dark Knight. And I look at movies two ways when it's adaptation like this. I look at it, how do they compare as objective films, and how do they compare, let's say, as a Batman film? I think that The Dark Knight still does stuff specifically as Heath Ledger's Joker, and specifically because of that opening, that no film has really come to that height. It's just really, really difficult to me because there's so many things, even from the opening of this movie, how it focuses on like the shadows and like really focuses on the dark spots and how you expect that Batman's going to come out of there, and how there's so many different styles mixed in. Like I felt a little bit of Tim Burton Batman in there when you see all the people in Gotham with all their masks and their Halloween stuff. But it's just so hard. I want to say as of now, I'm at a point where I still think Dark Knight is the objectively best Batman film. I still think, I agree with Kelly that this is the best Batman film, the Batman for Batman as a character, because I don't watch the Dark Knight trilogy really for Batman as much as the villains so much and the overall story. This is a Batman, like I want to see a sequel just for more of this Batman. I love this Batman. It's my favorite on-screen portrayal, and I didn't expect that from Robert Pattinson. I was one of the people criticizing it when he was cast. Like I love it. And so yeah, this is the best Batman movie for Batman. I'm still going to hold The Dark Knight as the best objective overall Batman, because you have to factor in if you're looking at just the movie in general, then the Joker is going to be factored into that, and then Dark Knight is still the highest on there. I'll see what it's like when I've watched the Batman like 50 times as much as The Dark Knight, and I can kind of weigh them then and kind of look at everything. But as of now, I'm going to go Batman is the best Batman film for Batman. The Dark Knight is still the best Batman film overall, as like looking at the full lore and franchise.
All right, guys, we've been going for over an hour and a half. I think this is a good place to cut the stream. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate everyone who hung out here and talked about the Batman with us. I'm going to go see it again tomorrow, and I'll be tweeting about my thoughts on it. Make sure you follow Teresa and Kelly. I linked their YouTubes down in the description below. Jake, also, you guys know him, Irgen, on YouTube. Go check him out as well, and subscribe to all of their channels if you guys enjoyed their presence on the stream. Also, make sure to like the stream and ring the notification bell. If you missed any point of it, it will be up as a VOD. You can rewatch it from the beginning. And I apologize if I wasn't fully engaging in the chat. Part of the reason why is because I kind of wanted this to serve as my Batman video review as well. So a lot of people reporting out in the chat, I wasn't responding to them. I didn't mean for that to be the case. I just wanted it to be a pleasant viewing experience for someone. If they were not actually in the stream and they want to watch it back, they can be able to follow it even if they weren't typing in or following along with the chat at all. So please excuse the the lack of engagement during this stream, but that's kind of the reason why. I'm definitely going to be doing the Arkham Knight playthrough stream soon, and those will be super engaging in the chat, and we'll have a lot of fun doing those streams. So thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you everybody for joining me. See you guys in the next live stream. Peace out.